100 years ago, in the 1670s, so the legend goes, when two British officers came up the Connecticut River, exploring its wild and lush valley. They say the two men, Captain Elizur Holyoke and Captain Roland Thomas, started north on opposite banks of the river. When they came to a narrow spot, now known as the Oxbow, they stopped and talked to each other across the water. Then each man gave his name to the mountain rising behind him. Captain Holyoke was standing across the river from the city that now bears his name, and so stands the mountain. The peak rising on the western bank has ever since been called Mount Tom. Today, Mount Tom's southern slopes are crisscrossed with ski trails, the latest recreational development on the mountain. 70 years ago, sightseers traveled to the peak of Mount Tom by cable railway, and there, from an impressive structure called the Summit House, they viewed the valley spread out below. Mountain Park, where the railway originated, offered a wide variety of diversions, including summer opera performances. The city also supported a permanent opera house, and the famous singer and Holyoke native Eva Tangway performed on its stage. Downtown there was a monumental city hall, and beyond shaded streets with luxurious Victorian homes. This was Holyoke in the 1870s, the decade when the burgeoning town became a city. That vanished opera house, the city hall, grand churches and mills, they speak of wealth and prosperity. Here's where it all came from, the great river. At Holyoke, the river dropped 60 feet over rushing rapids. Over 100 years ago, a Vermont salesman named George Ewing saw potential in that rushing water. Profits to be made if only the power of the falling water could be harnessed. Ewing, who had nothing but an idea, took his scheme to Boston and sold it to 5 Boston cotton barons, men whose names would one day be given to 5 of the city's major streets.
I have a plan, gentlemen.
George Lyman, Edmund Dwight, William Appleton, Samuel Cabot, and Ignatius Sargent were successful cotton merchants in the booming years before the Civil War. These men liked the Vermont salesman's idea, a grand plan to build a whole new city on 1,100 acres of farmland, an industrial city planned around textile mills and powered by the great river, which would be diverted into a system of canals. The site for this great adventure was then a small settlement called Arlen Parish, inhabited by a few scattered farmers who used the river's energy for a modest sawmill, a grist mill, and a tiny cotton mill. The transformation would require $2.5 million, so the 5 Bostonians formed the Hadley Falls Company. The dam was the key to the whole project, and a monumental engineering task for that day. Work began in 1848 and continued through the next year. But from the beginning, the project was beset by labor problems. The workers were poor Irish immigrants, refugees from the potato famines. When ordered to work 7 days a week instead of 6, they revolted. The Vermont salesman Ewing, now the developer, took the workers' part, saying it was a sin to work on the Sabbath. A strike followed, and the Northampton militia was summoned to put down a potential riot. Work resumed, and the dam was finished in November of 1849. There was a grand opening. People came from miles around and lined the riverbanks to see the gates close and the water rise. But somewhere there had been a miscalculation. 5 hours after the gates were closed, the huge dam sprung a leak, and 20 minutes later the whole dam gave way with a roar like an avalanche. Ewing sent an 8-word telegram to his backers in Boston, "Dam gone to hell by way of Willimantic." The failure was both magnificent and terrifying, and the disappointed financiers and Ewing blamed each other. Ewing said the dam would have held if they hadn't broken God's law by working on the Sabbath. The investors replied that Ewing should have paid more attention to God's laws of engineering. But the cotton barons were determined to succeed, and they went to work immediately on a second dam. The gates of the second and much stronger dam were closed 11 months later, in October of 1850. This dam held. The waters of the mighty Connecticut crashed over its crest with such force on the bedrock below that the pounding could sometimes be heard 10 miles away in Springfield. So an apron was built which softened the fall of the water and muffled the pounding roar. With the new city came a new name. Ireland Parish was renamed Holyoke after the same British officer who had christened the mountain. Other names considered but rejected were New City, Hampden, and Spindletown. Many of the Irish immigrants who built the dam stayed on. They settled at the riverside above the dam, an area which became known as the Patch. Though life was hard for these laboring newcomers, there were opportunities here, and many took them. Today, the Irish celebrate their heritage with an annual St. Patrick's Day parade, which attracts people from all over the Northeast. The next 5 years were dynamic and exciting. Canals were extending across the city, bringing power to the cotton and woolen mills, and hundreds came looking for work. One Holyoke resident named Nicholas Prue made his living by bringing fellow French Canadians from Quebec to work in the mills. Many of the 45 girls in his first wagon load became skilled weavers, and by 1900, 1/3 of the city's residents were of French Canadian origin. Like the Irish before them, what they found here was better than what they'd left. But work in the mills was hard. Newcomers crowded into shacks and tenements along the river, areas with names like the Patch, the Flats, Frenchville, and Tigertown. Later in the century, other immigrants followed: Germans, Poles, Italians, Jews, Greeks, blacks, and most recently Puerto Ricans, all of them coming to find something better, a job, enough to eat, the right to serve God in their own way. In this parade of hopeful immigrants, Holyoke's history is also the history of America. The city today still follows the basic design laid out in the 1850s, and a 120-year-old map would easily guide you along the central streets, canals, and mill sites. In those early years, Holyoke was a national phenomenon, the first planned industrial city in America, and the boom was on. In 1 year, the Hadley Falls Company sold 59 lots for mills and business sites. A $100,000 hotel, Holyoke House, was built for a city of 5,000 inhabitants. There were many famous names in textiles in Holyoke: Skinner Silk, Dwight, Lyman, Germania, and Far Alpaca, among others. But in 1853, the paper industry came to Holyoke, and within 20 years, Holyoke was known as Paper City in the United States and the world. At first, the Hadley Falls Company said they didn't want to encourage any such small business as paper making. But a man named Joseph Parsons persisted and established the first paper mill in Holyoke. It was followed by many more. Whiting, Valley, Hampden, Holyoke, and Newton were just a few. And there was a significant difference between the cotton merchants and the founders of the paper mills. The cotton men had been Bostonians, but the paper mill owners were from western Massachusetts. One of the co-founders of the Parsons Paper Company was Colonel Aaron Bagg. His great-grandson, Edward Parsons Bagg III, manages the company today.
The changeover of Holyoke's basic dependence on two major industries started in the Depression years and continued on a gradual basis right up through the World War II years and up until the present time. We now have achieved considerable diversification of industry in this city. We have been very progressive in the reinvestment of money here. We've put a lot of money into new machinery and modern machinery. So even though the company is 120 years old, we wouldn't be spending this kind of money if we didn't think that we had a good grasp on what's coming ahead of us. As far as the other industries that are here, I know that there have been quite a number of good, solid companies that have decided to locate here. And with the diversification, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't progress. I think some of the other areas of the country which were successful in earlier years in taking away some of our industry are coming to that point right about now where they're starting to feel some of their growing pains. And they will not be able to continue to maintain the same pace of growth forever. So I think that they eventually are going to get to the point where we were some years back. And then they're going to have to face a kind of a metamorphosis.
100 years ago, Holyoke's paper mills turned out 30 tons of paper a day. The cotton mills had 12,000 looms. The population was too big for the town meeting form of government, so Holyoke became a city. The massive new city hall had been under construction for 2 years, a symbol of her growing status. The 1870s and 80s were the period of Holyoke's most rapid growth. Baptist and Congregational churches had long been established, and the new people who continued to stream into the city yearned for their own place of worship. In 1854, the first Roman Catholic parish, St. Jerome's, was established under the guidance of Father O'Callahan. In 1902, Holyoke's first synagogue, B'nai Zion, was formed, and the Polish church, Mater Dolorosa, was opened by the popular Father Sikorsky. Father Patrick Harkins came to St. Jerome's Parish in 1866 and was nicknamed Harkins the Builder for his many accomplishments. He built the first Catholic high school in Holyoke and a convent for the nuns who taught there. He built Holy Rosary Church in the Flats and Holy Cross Church in the Highlands, and he founded Providence Hospital and Harkins Home for Aged Women. The early French Canadians held Mass in a mission chapel, and in 1872, when a terrible fire broke out in their chapel, 73 people died in the worst fire in Holyoke's history. But just 4 years later, the Church of the Precious Blood was completed, and they had a parish of their own. In 1916, St. Agnes Guild started a day nursery for children of working mothers, a real social innovation for its time. It is still in operation today with support from the United Way. By 1900, a new stone dam constructed of fitted granite blocks was finished across the Connecticut below the site of the wooden dam. Like the early dam, it was considered an engineering marvel for its day and is still securely in place today. In 1936, at the height of the worst flood in Holyoke's history, the water rushed 16.5 feet over the top of that stone dam, but only the top was damaged, and the lost blocks were replaced with the then new technique of reinforced concrete. Long before the dam in the new city, and long before Island Parish, the Nonotuck Indians came annually to the Great Rapids of the river to fish for shad and salmon. After the Indians had gone and whites had settled the area, hundreds of horses could be seen drawn up by the river, where their owners netted shad at the falls. Today, the Holyoke Water Power Company operates a fishway at the base of the dam. This gives the shad a boost over and allows the fish to swim as far as 40 miles upriver to spawn, and ensures the perpetuation of their annual runs. These youngsters playing hockey in Holyoke's new indoor year-round rink probably don't know that in the city's early years, baseball was king. In its heyday before the turn of the century, local teams often played for crowds of several thousand, and many players graduated to the bigger leagues from local teams. In 1895, William Morgan invented volleyball at the Holyoke YMCA, and the first basketball game was played in the same building. This new Olympic-sized pool in Holyoke High School plays host to swim meets and also gives students a chance to learn to swim. Every spring, the high school presents a student dramatic production.
Ding dong, the bells are gonna chime. Kick up Barnabas, but that was the time. Be sure and get me to the
Today, the city boasts a modern high school in addition to the brand new Donahue Elementary and the William Peck Junior High Schools. The junior high school is designed with classrooms radiating from a central core, and the new elementary school is laid out with open classrooms. These innovations are typical of Holyoke's historic dedication to a high caliber of public education.
When we got here, we worked our water lines up into the building, and we got to the third floor, the fire was racing through the cock lot. Uncontrollable.
It's the old Holyoke High School.
The old Holyoke High School.
On January 5th, 1968, the old Holyoke High School building burned totally to the ground. It had been the home for the Holyoke Community College for over 20 years. The school had its beginnings there in 1946 as the Holyoke Junior College, part then of the Holyoke Public School System. So the immediate reaction of the whole community was shock and horror. It's gone. We just couldn't believe it.
Ann McHugh is chairman of the Holyoke School Committee.
Not only was the building gone, but there was a very definite feelings coming from the state that they wouldn't replace the building, that they would combine it with the Springfield Technical Community College. So the entire community was one great big war whoop, decided, oh no, they aren't. And we stood our ground, everybody. I have never seen such a concerted effort on the whole city unanimously in back of an idea and a concept. Now we have this spectacular new Holyoke Community College opening soon, which will stand for as long as it stands as a testimony to the courage and the spirit of the people of the city of Holyoke.
The medical profession is one of Holyoke's biggest employers. Holyoke City Hospital's modern facility is complemented by Providence Hospital and the Soldiers' Home built in 1962. The Holyoke Geriatric Center provides special services for the city's senior citizens.
This meeting is now in order. The clerk call a roll.
It is fitting that a city which looks forward to the future as Holyoke does should have a young and energetic mayor. The Honorable William S. Topier has served 6 years as mayor.
Holyoke is commencing on its second 100 years, and of course, we're very excited about the tie-in of the management team, both the Board of Aldermen and the Mayor's office, working to bring about many of these social changes that are happening. We have a very innovative Model Cities program. We have a geriatric care center to take care of our elderly people. We have a very new and innovative team police concept. We have a planned million-square-foot shopping mall in the west end of Holyoke, which will be the largest regional mall in the area. The industrial development of the Whiting Farms area is very exciting. We have 5 or 6 new plants up there now, with the Worthing Corporation relocating there very shortly. I think that probably Holyoke's greatest resource are the people of Holyoke. What makes these people the spirited people that they are, their interest in athletics, their interest in civic affairs, I think it comes from an assimilation of many ethnic groups. The ethnic prides of first-generation people then assimilated into a group of people known as Hoyokers.
Holyoke is situated at the intersection of the Massachusetts Turnpike and Interstate 91. The scenic Connecticut River Valley is also the site of several nearby colleges. The river itself, tennis courts, golf courses, Mount Tom State Reservation for hiking and picnicking, all are part of the recreation facilities in Holyoke. The attitude of people toward their city can perhaps be best seen in their celebrations, and Holyoke's 100th birthday rallied the enthusiastic support of her citizens in a way that would do justice to a city 5 times as large. With the pageant to honor Holyoke's history, the Centennial Parade, and the whole year of special events, nearly everyone participated in some part of their city's 100th birthday. A lifelong resident and the acknowledged elder statesman of Holyoke is Mr. John Begley.
It's been a year-long celebration. The ethnic groups have gotten together, and they have dramatized their culture, and it's been a good thing for the community, because all these cultures have than the leaven for what we call the great American democracy. There were some cruel sanctions leveled against the newer immigrants in those days, but they threw it off. This was a free country, and somehow they felt that someday at least their children were going to have the advantages of the free institutions of this country, and that's just what's happened. I have a great pride in it. I was born here. My father was an immigrant, a laborer, and I took advantage of the opportunities to educate myself, because I could get no help anywhere, but I worked it through. And matter of fact, I enjoyed it. I really did. It creates a spirit in the community, because there were a great many of my generation who did the same thing. And they're professional men, they're businessmen, they're manufacturers today, all because of the opportunities which are replete in this country.
There is a special feeling in this city, and certainly part of the reason is that the people who live here share a sense of place, a feeling that they belong. Always open to newcomers, the residents of Holyoke are today an expression of the best of the American experience. Many of those at the heart of Holyoke's life today are descendants of those who built the unique planned city more than 100 years ago. They built the dams, dug the canals, founded and worked in the mills. And though they have changed with the times, they are a part of the continuity of Holyoke's history, living and working in the knowledge that their contribution will make the next 100 years as exciting and rewarding as the first.